I'd like to welcome everybody to the July 28th, 2021 Public Safety Committee meeting. Can we have roll call, Kelly?
Chairman Lockmiller,
Here.
Alderman Plufka,
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill, Alderwoman Sims. Here. All members are present.
Thank you. Move on to approval of the agenda. Any changes or additions, or can we approve by acclamation? Is that okay? All right, it shall be done. Moving on to citizen comment. Anybody in the audience like to make a comment? Do we have anybody virtually? Yes, come on up. State your name.
Depot today?
And your name?
I am Jane Rich. Can I take this down?
Go ahead, Jane. Yeah.
I'm 8906 Pine, and I've been 8906 Pine since November 1st, 1987. Before that, I was at 9166 Robin Court. So I'm almost nearing my 40-year mark in Brentwood. So when I moved to my house, I had little children, and I noticed right away that Pine Avenue was busy back then. So I urged the city back then to get the slow children sign that were put up back probably when my kids were little, and they're now 35 and 33. So I started this campaign in my mind years ago to slow Brentwood, or slow Pine Avenue down. And then, you know, I asked again a long time ago for speed bumps, and I got told the fire trucks couldn't go over them. So then I asked for more and got the speed trap sign. So I've continually over the years kept nagging the city to do something. So in January, my dog broke his leg, a little puppy. So he had to be in a cast for 2 months. And March the 8th, he got out of it. And I started walking my streets 6 times a day, morning, starting at 6 a.m. till 10 o'clock at night, all during the day to let him learn how to go potty, because he had to learn how to walk and strengthen his leg. So what do I see but constant speeding over the speed limit? We can see the sign. It shows us. I've seen 38 miles an hour from a white SUV Infiniti before. I just yelled at a car going down the street on the way here when I was walking my dog to slow it down. They're always going so fast. You can hear them coming. It's just unbelievable, the neglect, the disrespect for the people that walk their dogs, walk their kids in their strollers. They have to have a car, literally, we've got 3 feet between us and the road. Now, if you go above Pine into high school, you've got 6 feet of grassy area between you and the school. So I don't have very much distance. If I'm right here, there's 3 feet, and this car's going 30 to 35 miles an hour. I can feel it. It's stunning. And it happens at 6 a.m. It happens at 10:40 at night. It happens all through the day. The police can come and sit there, and as soon as they leave, here comes the next round of people. You know, I've told the police that sit there for traffic that you won't have to sit here anymore if we can just get these speed bumps. We need one up the hill when they start to come down. We need one at the flat, because by the time they get to my driveway, I'm the 8th house down from the PNC Bank. When they get to my driveway, they're already at 30. So they need to slow down before they get to my driveway, and then if they're allowed to, you know, go fast, they're gonna speed on up the hill anyway. So we need another one, because somewhere in the middle of coming down that hill. So they don't ever get a chance to go 30, and then you guys don't ever have to come and do radar. You'll never need radar again on our street if they just have to slow down in these 2 spots. I mean, it only makes sense. And to have to go through a month's worth of process to fill out 29 papers. I got to know all my neighbors really good, which has been a great thing. So it's been work. I took time out of my business to do this, to take the time to go see people, talk to them, tell them the problem. Heck, if you look at how they hand wrote some of the things, their passion was in their writing on the paper. You could see big people, you know, no speed, circling hard on the paper. People with passion was coming out of them in their handwriting on those forms, all 28 or 29 that were submitted. So you could see that yourselves if you looked at how they wrote their, you know, thing. Thanks. Anyway, so if you guys have questions, you can ask them to me, but I'm dedicated to seeing us get some kind of safety protection on our street from these people that could run us over and don't care. And I can go up past High School Drive, and I can look in people's driveways and see which car's doing it. I could go and put a sticky on their note and go, please slow down on my block. I don't go past your house like really fast. But that's how bad it is. I can tell where the people live now that are doing this, and it's continually the same people doing a lot of it. And to see that 64 miles an hour was recorded on our street at 1:15 in the afternoon on June the 20th was reason enough to have a speed bump put in. 64 miles an hour and at 20, that's unheard of. That's craziness. We can't live like that. We're a residential street that's supposed to be 20. It's supposed to be quiet time, not worry about I'm gonna get hit. and they're texting, and they're on their phone. You know, you see that too from where I'm in my yard a lot. You guys can come by and see my lovely garden. I'm in my yard a lot, so I see what goes on. I'm the policeman of the street in a way, watching what goes on. So I'm just fed up, and that's why I'm here, because winners never quit and quitters never win. So I'm gonna win this one because we need our safe street to be safe. Just like I was stunned when I saw on Pine Avenue, the other end where the turn is. When I saw those mats go down, I was like in shock. Where are they on my block? Because my block needed it before the little turn. You have to slow to go that turn anyway, and there's always cars parked on the side of the road. So it was really stunning to me to see that the other end of Pine, where it's curved and you gotta slow down anyway to make the curve, why did they get it before us on Pine Avenue, where we have to have a digital sign to say how much speeding is going on? So I think that's as fast as I can spit it out to you guys, but
Well, I think your persistence will be rewarded if you stick around.
hey, I taught at the skating rink for 21 years, and I taught all my little kids that winners never quit and quitters never win. So when I get behind a cause, I stick with it.
Thank you, Jane. Kelly, anybody else?
That'll do it.
Yes.
David Dimmitt, 9104 Pine. I too want to speak in support of an item that's on your agenda for tonight, and that is the traffic calming measure for the 8900 block of Pine. I've lived at Pine on Pine since 2001, and I have witnessed firsthand number of times the number of cars that have been what I thought were flying up and down that stretch of Pine. That stretch being between High School and Brentwood Boulevard. And as Jane stated, it has been a problem since I've been here. And it's nice to see, while it was all anecdotal, to see it actually now finally backed up in hard numbers. We cannot deny that that is a unique street in Brentwood. It's one of the few streets that is as long as it is without any traffic calming measures present. We've tried it now over the years. We've asked the police department, and they've done everything they possibly can. We know that they have very limited resources. They cannot park a car there 24 hours a day to try and lower the speed of the cars. They put unmanned cars there, they put manned cars there, but they just can't be there all the time. And it truly is a public safety issue. So I'm glad it's in front of this committee, because this is exactly where it should be. I understand that it can also be an inconvenience to have those, but there are a lot of things that we do in the name of public safety that are also inconvenient. We wear masks to try and keep people safe. It's inconvenient. Speed cushions will help lower the speed of the cars on that stretch of Pine. It's been shown to work in other areas of the city, and what we are asking for is that this committee make a recommendation to the board to put them in at 2 places on Pine, in between Brentwood and High School. Thank you.
Anybody else, Kelly?
No hands are raised.
On to the city administrator report. Olin, anything?
I don't think so. No.
All right. Move on to committee chair and alderman reports. I have one thing. There's been a lot of talk about about golf carts, evidently, in Brentwood, and I just wanted to get the committee's temperature on whether this is something that the Public Safety Committee really needs to take up at this time. Dan has given us a little bit of preliminary information on here. So just kind of wanted to hear if anybody's had any other issues in your wards, that this is something that we really want to spend any time with.
I mean, for my neighborhood, I've not had anybody using a golf cart that I can see. And I've not had anybody ask me about being able to use a golf cart. My daughter lives on the hill where it's, ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And, but I've not had that experience in Brentwood.
I know I've spoke with both chiefs, and there hasn't been any incidents or anything of that nature. So, Kathy?
Yeah, I saw a near collision last week. I did not expect a golf cart in Brentwood, and approaching the mobile station, I saw a golf cart come out. Of course, it wasn't going at the speed of traffic, and no one else was expecting it either. So there was nearly a pileup of cars.
Was it on
trying-
Brentwood?
On Brentwood.
Wow.
It went north out of the mobile station. So I don't know if if we were going to do something, if we can put in a facet of education to teach drivers, if you're going to come out on a busy highway, you've got to figure out how to do it at a speed that isn't going to cause accidents from other drivers.
Sonny, any complaints in you?
I haven't seen a golf cart being driven in Brentwood. I have seen it in other municipalities and other neighborhoods where they are prevalent, and therefore an ordinance is appropriate. Is that something that could evolve, that when Brentwood Bound is done, people want to drive their golf carts? I mean, I think it's good to be proactive. It's a solution not for a problem that I don't think yet exists. But I don't want people to like roll tape on this all the time. I think if people are going to think, I'm going to get a golf cart and drive them on the streets, there needs to be, you might be able to stand on the shoulders that might, so it might not be to have it on the books. I mean, I'm kind of ambivalent about it. I mean, I think if it was a problem, people had golf carts.
Yes, I think there should be insurance. I think it should.
I think, yeah,
Right.
there's some best practices, and certainly maybe. I don't know if there are general prohibitions on you can't drive on Brentwood. I wouldn't think that that's I don't know, like whatever the best practice is.
That's a good question. Is there a county ordinance or a state statute or
Just
Not.
okay?
Our code is silent on it.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Our code is silent on it.
Well, I'm inclined at this time just to table it until, something comes up later that it looks like we need to maybe look into some our surrounding municipalities and see what they do.
I've seen no chatter one way or the other on golf carts. I'm familiar with other municipalities where it just seems, particularly they're near a golf course or a club or, a large neighborhood where they like, so.
Yeah.
Alderman
It's a solution
Lockman.
to a problem.
So at the Public Works Committee, I think this came up somehow, and Alderwoman Tice indicated that she had seen one in a July 4th parade. There's a neighborhood July 4th parade in Ward 1, and she saw one in a parade, and I think she also said she may have seen a teenager driving one. I did see one on Litzinger trying to cross Eulalie. So, but this was 6:30, on a weekday. So they do exist in town, but there has been no communication with the city that it's causing a problem yet.
Are there other communities in St. Louis County that have regulated this?
City of Clayton, Webster, Eureka.
I mean, I volunteer to research that and come back to the committee with something that just says how they regulated it.
Well, Dan has.
Dan-
Oh,
this-
is Dan's already? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'd like whichever one it says that they gave way to bicyclists. I had never thought as a bicyclist that I would meet a golf cart. It just hasn't ever come up. So it was just an interesting issue in there, and I don't remember whether it was Webster or Clayton or what,
Yeah,
but one of them had that.
Our city attorney, Kevin O'Keefe, actually worked on the Clayton one, so I don't think it would be that burdensome if you wanted something, since it's already been done for another municipality. You just have to see if you want some of the same requirements in there, seat belts, insurance, I think those are all good things. And then as far as the operations, headlights, taillights, turn signals, things that cars have, these should have at a minimum.
Yeah. Looks like Clayton just outlawed it.
It sound like something we want to direct staff to look into, or just hold off at this time? Anybody?
Why don't we go ahead and get something in the works? If there are several in town, it might be better to have something going than just ignore the issue until something happens. So, yeah.
Right.
If you could just piggyback off one of these.
Is there anyone that you favor more so than others?
Everyone said bicycles. That impressed me.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the subject matter.
Well, should we put it on the agenda for next meeting then? Sure. It sounds like that's a yes,
For this
so,
one?
yeah, I guess
Okay.
gather some information or present what you have for next meeting.
Yeah, I can draft something with Kevin O'Keefe and bring it back.
Yeah.
I would think the prevailing, I don't know if there's a circuit split on golf cart register, I mean, I would think the prevailing trend, I'm happy with the bell curve on this one.
Well, I think the reason also is we have a dealer on Manchester Road that's selling these things, and I think, especially in Ward 3, we seem to have quite a few now that I guess people see them. They're pretty cool looking, but yeah.
What is the dealer?
Teen team.
Teen, yeah.
We're going to have another citizen comment, Jane. So, all right, good. Well, then let's move on. Alderman Plefka, any report?
No.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
No report.
Alderwoman Sims? All right, we'll move on to department reports. We have Police Department. Chief Spees?
Good evening. I'll go through the crime report real quickly. The had a bit of an uptick in July in crime, and in particular in vehicle-related crime. To point out a couple of those, there was a car stolen from our YMCA lot. On the 7th of July, that car was recovered over in East St. Louis, but the YMCA lot's a popular place during the day for guys that are roaming around doing that style of crime. So we had one of those. We also had a contractor's car here at City Hall that was broken into. That happened the following day. The people that were active doing those have been caught. So those, the car's been recovered. They were two suspects from East St. Louis were arrested for that one. Also of interest in the car area, 718, we had in the 9400 block of White, we had several cars broken into. One thing that was very concerning about that case was they took garage door openers out of the vehicles when they went through the cars. We're not exactly sure why they did that, but there have been cases where they come back and use the garage door later that week, usually, and they go into the garage after they click the garage door open, usually at night, looking for a car to steal, and some of them actually come in people's houses. That did not happen here. We went back out to the neighborhood for the people that had their garage doors openers taken. We consulted with the victims. We told them to be especially vigilant that this could happen, and did extra patrol in the area. So we didn't have an incident after that, but that was a concerning incident that happened on the 21st of July. The Target lot was hit a couple times. We continue to see that in the retail areas. We had a couple on the Van Markway area down off of Manchester. One of the crime trends that we're looking at is there are people that are going around our retail area and generally in retail, and they're looking for women who leave their purses in their carts, and they grab the purse, and then they grab their debit credit cards, and they immediately go out and use them. We had two of these incidents on the 21st and 15th from Nordstrom Rack and Target. These are sprinkled into our retail just about every month. So we're in the process of doing an education bulletin. The difficult part is that this is really not a Brentwood resident issue. These are people that are coming into our retail shop from all over the area. So messaging this theft from your cart is somewhat of a challenge for, and the stores are not interested at this point in posting anything that this is going on. So another area of crime that the entire St. Louis area has been afflicted with is catalytic converter thefts. Hoffman Brothers has been our most frequent flyer on this. They like to go underneath the trucks and they steal the catalytic converters. We had 2 incidents, one on the 23rd. That happened at 2700 block of South Brentwood, and then Hoffman Brothers was our other victim in that case. We had 1 robbery in the month of July this far. It really was not what you would call a typical street robbery. This was a homeless guy that went to Home Depot, took out a knife, said he wanted to get in their safe. Officers responded. They had a little foot chase with him. They caught him. I think this was more of a mental health crisis than it was a robbery. So, anybody have any questions on the crime report for the last few weeks?
I have a
Kathy?
question.
Yes, ma'am.
It's technically Ward 2, I think, not mine, but a lot of the people from the village park their cars at the Y. The Y isn't happy about it, but do you ever have any way of telling whose car is being opened when that happens? Have you noticed a preponderance of problems with that, or is it just whatever happens?
It's random. You know, it's really is random when they come through Brentwood. They'll hit our retail area, but gyms typically are a really good place for them because people leave their purses and wallets and things in their cars. So parks, gyms, things like that. But it's really random. We typically get a couple of these a month at the Y. I was going to close with just talking briefly about fireworks this year. We have obviously an ongoing issue with fireworks, and in Brentwood, like every city, is a challenge. Fireworks are illegal, obviously, but between the week of 4th of July this year, we had 15 calls for service, which is not inordinately high. Out of those calls for service, 4 of them occurred on the holiday on the 4th of July. And when I pulled all of the information from these calls, nearly all of them come in as people that don't want to be contacted. So a citizen will call in and they'll say there's fireworks being shot off in their neighborhood or on top of the Hanley Street garage. We got 3 or 4 of those. So the officers will go to the area where the fireworks are supposedly being set off. They'll try and locate the people that are doing it. Sometimes they'll get there and they'll see smoke, they'll see firework debris, but there's nobody around, so there's nobody to necessarily talk to or summons. We give our officers, in a lot of ways in policing, we give them discretion for warnings. So some of them end up in a warning to a homeowner or whoever it may be, saying, knock it off. If we have to come back, we're going to write you a summons. So out of the cases that we had, there were 2 summonses written. There were several warnings provided to people. It's a challenge for us because it is frustrating, especially as these calls come in late at night. The citizens wakes their kids up, scares their dogs, all of these things. So we get the frustration behind it, but at the same time, we're trying to suppress it without being oppressive to the people that live here in Brentwood. Any questions on that? That's all I had, sir.
Chief, I was wondering if there's any update on the UMSL collaboration with training.
The grant was applied for by the people at UMSL, and we, as you know, we're going to approach the board to just, I think it's an informational. Bola, is that where we landed on the UMSL grant?
Yes, it's informational. It'll be on the 16th Board of Aldermen agenda.
So if it's approved, we'll know by the end of the year if it's approved, and then it'll be go active in the 2022, 2023 years.
Then I think you all performed a training session last week.
Yeah, we had a series of trainings. We did the entire department last week. Our new alderman, Shelton, came out and was watched. So yeah, it was good for him to come out. We appreciated it.
Any questions for our chief?
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, move on to the fire department. We have our new assistant fire chief, Chief Burney.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Thank you for having me. Chief Cottrell is in North Carolina finishing up his professional development last class, so I'll be speaking for the reports that were posted and the new one that we just received this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Looking at the department report, just kind of a synopsis from last month. So since we last met, one of our high-time employees, Private Brian Hagedorn, submitted his retirement letter. His last day on the payroll will be this Friday, the 30th, and he retires after 34 years of service. Segueing into that, we have an application hiring period open right now. That initially was to create an eligibility list for potential retirements for next year. That list will now be for an immediate hire, and then an eligibility list for calendar year '22. And again, we're looking at least 1 year for the eligibility list, or until it's exhausted. Last week, just 7 days ago, we responded down into the city of Shrewsbury at that massive MSD tunnel site. One of their workers fell down a 180-foot shaft, and shaft is a misnomer because it's almost 40 feet in diameter, but fell down onto, got knocked over by a concrete form at the 180-foot level. So that was dispatched as a major rescue. Brentwood personnel were second on the scene, suited up, ready to go. Unbeknownst to us, the worker was extracted from the position before we even arrived on the scene. So the MSG crews and the general contractor used the cranes and the safety baskets that they already had in place. We still treated it as a confined space rescue, and we wanted to make sure we had accountability for everyone that was working in that shaft at the time. Minor injury, so I don't think it could have turned out much better than it did. Our building inspection process is ongoing. That has opened back up now. We are performing those with the mandated safety, which I'll kind of talk about in conjunction with the new safety plan that came out today. It gives our crews a chance to engage with the business owners, not on an emergency basis. Allows us to update our pre-plans and then build some rapport with the vendors, get some face time when it's not an emergency. As you all know, COVID-19, particularly the Delta variant, is making a resurgence. About 2 weeks prior to it becoming very prevalent in the news media reporting, we did an updated inventory on all of our PPE supplies. If you remember from about this time last year, acquisition of PPE supplies was the prime reason that operations could have been affected because everybody wanted everything yesterday. We are up to date on all of our supplies. Everything is NIOSH and OSHA approved. We're ready for anything that will come up with that. And again, we're in constant contact with the County Department of Health. They're the ones that are actually driving the narrative for what is best practices for the first responder community, which is reflected in the safety plan that we'll talk about here eventually. And finally, we would like to begin a strategic planning process focused on the fire department. I think this is a very good thing for a department of this size. A, because we don't have one. B, with the short time that I've been here, we have a very engaged workforce, young, hungry, and it'll give the department some direction and vision for about 5 years out. We'd also like to take a look at any other strategic plans that exist within the city to make sure that our goals and objectives kind of mesh with anything else that is available or that we can assist with accomplishing. If you would like a presentation for that, I can give you a little bit more detail besides what the document is that we'll talk about next. But I have facilitated these for about 12 years now. Wrote the one at my previous department. I think this one here will be fun to do, and I think you'll be pleased with the results.
Anybody got any questions for the Assistant Chief on that? I guess I just had one on that. Would that, as far as engaging stakeholders, would that be done in-house? That means, you know, you guys would go ahead and assemble those stakeholders, or are we looking at a consultant to come in, or?
You're speaking to the consultant right now. Okay. You're already paying me a pretty good wage to do what I do, and that's within my skill set within the accreditation model. There's internal stakeholders, employees, and then we have external stakeholders, and that's where in the fire department we would like to reach out to the administration and governance to help us decide who the external stakeholders are. I had a sample, just a sampling of what groups could look like. But again, being the new person here, you guys live here, so you have the pulse of the community, but the community's input is important. for a strategic plan, because they're the ones that are using our services. They're the ones that'll be driving the narrative.
Is there a time frame on this?
Actually, the time frame is pretty much linked to when you would like the plan published. With the department being small and the external stakeholder group being proportionately small, although very engaged, this will go pretty quick. Given the right resources and the timelines and approval, we could be looking at as early as by the end of the year, or maybe first quarter of next year. And again, it just depends on the feedback we get from the stakeholders, which will guide that narrative, because we don't have a mission statement, we don't have a vision statement, and we don't have value statements. So the internal employees will be very, very key in developing those. And then we build the objectives based off of that input.
So to follow up on the chairman's question, beyond the fact that this would be guided internally, and we're talking about time there, are there external expenses associated with this that aren't reflected in what you've already written?
Nope.
No? And you're talking about 6 to 9 months?
Roughly.
And do you need, so are you looking for, when you first spoke about this, you said you were looking for some sort of guidance. Are you looking for us as a committee to refer this to the full board and have the full board say this is a good thing for you to do, or are you just?
Yeah, I mean, to have an officially published strategic plan, yes. Governance, it increases the credibility of the plan if the governance is involved with the development of the plan and they approve it as well.
So I'll make a motion that we approve for consideration by the full board the strategic plan development workflow plan as described by the assistant chief, the memo dated July 28th, 2021.
Bo, I just have a question that, I mean, is this something that the committee can give direction to, since there's no expense?
Yeah, there is no expense. The expense is already being covered by the city, so that's compensation, salaries.
Right.
So I think
Does
that.
it have to go to a full board?
I don't think so.
Unless you would like
Unless it was the
unless you would
board
like
that
it
was
to.
actually, part of your strategic plan, whether you all were coming up with, short-term, long-term goals for the department. I think we can, under city administrator report, inform the board that way, since Chief Burney indicates that they're going to be looking to you all to make recommendations on who could be part of this stakeholder group. It's very similar to what the board did when we were meeting with CPSM.
Sure.
You all made the recommendation on, it would be similar
But was
to
the
that.
recommendation made at committee level, or did it go to the full board?
I think we had each alderperson give like 2 names to serve
Okay.
as part of that group. So it would be very similar, right? I don't know how many total stakeholders you all are looking for in the department, but on average, 2 from each ward or 4 from each ward, something like that. So before this goes to the board for just general information, I'll ask that the department nail that down.
So I didn't want to interrupt you. Were
No, go ahead.
okay.
If you still have
So are you recommending that we do make a motion for the full board to consider recommending this, or is it something that the committee can recommend and it can be
yes.
go to the full board for
Yes.
information only?
Yes, exactly.
The latter?
The latter.
So I'll withdraw my motion to bring it for full consideration by the board, but instead make a motion that this committee give direction to our fire department to begin work on the strategic plan development workflow plan, and that for informational purposes only, the notice of this go to the full board.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right.
Great, thank you very much. The last thing on your report agenda which was added at about 3 o'clock today, is the updated COVID Delta variant first responder safety plan. This is just an update to the existing safety plan that has been in effect and has been changed up and down over the last 14 to 15 months. Right now, we have dropped it down to the orange level, which indicates that there is a trend of rising COVID positives within the first responder community, which at this point has not affected day-to-day operations. I'm happy to report that the city of Brentwood is at 0 in the fire department, and I believe we just have one in the police department. There are other agencies around us that number is higher, which triggered the change to the orange level. Essentially, the plan gives us the CDC guidance for best practices, but allows the AHJ to determine which of those best practices they choose to enact. They can be as strict as we're separated in the firehouse, everyone's wearing a mask, no, social distancing, everything like it was back in March and April when everything was locked down. I spoke with Chief Cottrell earlier today and kind of discussed a little bit of a modification to operations. We feel comfortable following the component of the plan that says that within the station, those that are not vaccinated are wearing a mask, and then when we're out in the public, when we're running an EMS call or a 911 call, we're wearing all the PPE as well. When we're not on a call, when we're just in the community, either at the store, doing an inspection, whatever, we have asked our team to model behavior and do best practices and be in a mask, regardless of your vaccination status. That has allowed us to continue with the pre-plan and the inspection program. That is the best practice. That's what we're doing right now, and that's what we would like to continue with. This plan right now, I suspect that it'll probably be reviewed at least once a week, probably twice a week, and we were at once a week reporting for your positives and quarantines and persons under investigation, but now they want us going back to daily, but it'll only be reported once a week on the situation report that county DPH puts up. So that's where we stand right now. We're prepared for whatever Delta deals us, and we're in very good shape right now, and we feel confident that the practices that we're doing right now will keep us as such.
Questions? Kathy?
Can I ask how many of the firefighters do not have the vaccine
We have 2.
and to get it?
Sorry, ma'am?
Do they intend to get it?
We have discussed the benefits of the vaccine with them. For whatever reason, they've chosen not to. We will continue to have those conversations.
Has there been any consideration to I see employers doing that. I mean, but I don't. Unless there's a medical reason or a sincerely held religious belief or some other protected reason, it renders me speechless that a firefighter would refuse to get a vaccine.
Yes, I can't speak to the 2 employees, what their belief system or what their reasoning is. They have chosen not to. It's offered, and we remind them that it's offered, and it's considered best practice.
Do we know whether, like, I mean, I don't know how to go about doing, I mean, I'm not wearing a legal hat here, I'm the client, but, I mean, I certainly think that we should at least explore a policy or something wherein it's a requirement that you have to have a vaccine.
When I hear policy, I hear ways and means.
Oh, I knew you were gonna say that. You know, it seems like a safety issue. It really, really does. I mean, people, I read what anecdotally I see in the news that there, I mean, Google's doing it, hospitals are doing it. It just seems like that ought to be, in a way that threads the needle as needed. I mean, I don't know.
Paula, do we know citywide how many employees have not been?
I asked Jason to get me a head count, and we'll be presenting that at the next Ways and Means Committee in September. We actually already have a policy that the city's Labor Council has drafted for consideration at that meeting. Just a cursory survey, I don't know any city in St. Louis County that has implemented such a policy. And I think that the Ways and Means Committee were certainly, leading that charge. I want to say maybe last year when we presented that early on, there was a recommendation, I think it may have been unanimous, to have a mandatory policy, but it was early on in the process, and we got some feedback from the union and I think the police department that didn't really consider that favorably. But since then, I've been told that there are a number of hospitals in the region that have made it mandatory. So I don't know necessarily that the city would be doing something that others haven't done, but we do have a policy for your consideration. It mirrors what we presented last year, which is every employee must be vaccinated unless you have a medical or a religious reason. And from what I understand, there are ways to get around that too. You know, you change your religion, for instance.
All we can do is the best we can, but I do think that how you test that, I have no idea, but
Right. Jason's reviewed what the attorneys have provided, and he says he likes it. So when we upload it to board docs, the entire board will have access of it too. It's not a large number, but in each department, there's a few who have not been vaccinated. In City Hall, I think we may have 2 or 3 as well.
Can you separate out a department like first responders and make them, and then not have the rest of the policy for the non-uniform? Can you do that?
I will have to ask the Labor Council that question.
Just curious. Well, I think it's gonna be in your ballpark. Any other questions for the chief? Assistant chief, sorry, not yet.
I'll take it.
All right, thanks, Ed.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll move on to Public Works reports. Dan?
Yeah, this is pretty short and sweet. Brentwood Forest, 4 of those 5 lights are erected out there where we picked those. Amron's got those installed. I just need to see if they're actually working. And then the 5th one is laying there. It's over by Redbird Cove and Wrenwood. So the materials are setting there alongside of where it's supposed to be erected. And I'm assuming that they'll get to it relatively soon. I'll have to send them an email reminder just so they don't lose track of it. York Village, I contacted those folks at the beginning of July. I'll just have to follow up more phone calls and emails, see if they'll respond. I don't know any other way to get them to respond, but it's their property, so if they don't want it.
3 locations?
It's still the 3 private property, yeah.
Okay.
Like 2 on York, and I'm trying to think where the other one is, but
Northcote, maybe.
yeah, closer to Northcote, I believe. But yeah, there were 3 proposed spots there. We still haven't gotten anybody to.
Okay.
Initially, they said they were favorable, but I just need to pin them down and actually, are you going to sign it or not? If you don't, we'll move on and put them elsewhere. But we do have all the materials in place, you know, the wiring and everything, so it's not an issue of, like before, we didn't have all the materials. One of the things I thought of while I was sitting there, it's not necessarily public safety, but sort of. The Rosalie STP, I know that's actually more Public Works. We'll be bringing the bids to Public Works. But regarding the safety part, there are street lights that'll be part of that project, as well as the new sidewalk on the south side, you know, between Brentwood Boulevard and Swim Club. So that'll actually, construction take place this year. We're just waiting on MoDOT concurrence for those bids. Those were opened on the 20th. And then one last thing, when I was looking at street lights, I noticed there's MSD inlet. I don't know if anybody in Brentwood Forest noticed, but it's on the southeast corner of High School and Swan Circle, like just south of the tennis courts, like near the monuments for Brentwood Forest. Somebody must have hit it with a truck or something because the lid is askew on top of the inlet. So I'll have to report that to MSD to have them lift it up and concrete it back into place. It's not really a trip hazard because there's no sidewalk right there. The sidewalk's on the other side of High School, but it still doesn't look good because it's tilted, yeah. So in case anybody from Brentwood Forest asks you about it, we'll report it this week.
I'll check with Kent, thank you.
Okay.
Questions for Dan on those issues? David?
We had the one, I asked you about whether you might talk to MSD about the adequacy of the High School Drive storm sewer and whether or not it's on any kind of schedule for MSD to be replaced and upgraded.
Yeah, there was only one short little section of high school drive, like closer to White, where they were going to replace some sewers. Actually, they're just separating sewers. So right now, there's combined sewers in the area throughout Brentwood, and they're just separating, so you'll have sanitary in one and storm in the other. I'd left a message for one of their engineers to see if, it has anything to do with capacity improvements or anything like that. I haven't heard back yet.
So along the area of where the.
But this is a long time off too, so it's like they're saying that that project that they told me about in high school is like 2023 was when it would bid.
Okay.
And 2025 would be when it's completed, so it's still several years on the horizon.
So as it pertains to the section of high school that would correspond to the construction? then
Yeah,
nothing-
it's not
nothing
right
there
by the
that's-
new high school, it's
It's
not
south of that,
close.
it sounds like.
Right, yeah, it's not too far from McGrath, but it's not there either. It doesn't correct anything on Bridgeport or anything
Right.
like that.
Okay.
So we'll check some more on that. And then regarding that school area, there's actually a meeting on Friday that I was invited to that'll be with the school district, and one of the Brentwood inspectors and I will go to that. That's at the school district. I believe it's at 11, but it's this Friday, just to talk about construction in general. Navigate will be there, and where they are in the schedule, and just things. I don't know if there's anything that you've heard that you'd like us to speak to. One of the things I had was just cleaning the road and making sure things get picked up at the end of the day. So
Yeah, that was the nature of the complaints.
Dan, I had a complaint at our ward meeting. There were 2 people there, but it was a ward meeting. And that they're using Harrison again, the construction.
I did see an email today to that effect, so we'll have to talk to Navigate.
And yeah, if you could, because I drove by there today and they were staging their dump trucks on Harrison. So,
Oh, coming into the site rather than
yeah,
leaving?
right there at Harrison facing high school. So,
Yeah, they're not supposed to be on it. They're supposed to be on Litzinger.
I don't know if they could somehow, and they're all subcontractors, but if somebody could post, no construction traffic signs, I mean, it should be up to the contractor to
Or
do
talking
that.
to Navigate perhaps, or something.
Yeah,
I
we'll
just
bring it
wanna-
up, and especially since we have a meeting with them Friday,
Yeah.
just to get it in the meeting minutes there.
Yeah, mention that to him. I just wanted to bring that up. All right, anything else? I guess we'll roll on to old business, and Dan, that's you with some traffic calming requests.
Yep, the first one is 8611 Eulalie. So I gave you quite a few reports. I don't know if anybody had any questions on those, but I can kind of go over the highlights, and then some of the rhyme and reason how I go through these. So the question was, or actually the request was for us to look at vehicle speeds, vehicles rolling through stop signs, and then a request for a speed cushion. That was the paraphrasing the request. We got the quantity of signatures that we needed. We deployed the data collector, ran data from July 9th through July 22nd. So it's pretty recent. And that's that block between Dorothy and Helen. So some of the things we observed from the data collector, pulling that data from like the traffic analysis report, and then some of the other reports I look at a little more closely would be like volume by speed and then volume by speed by direction. So the highlights would be the 85th percentile, which is 85% of the cars are doing this speed, which is 24 miles per hour. The other 15% could be above that. 50th percentile, 20 miles per hour. The average speed, if you looked at all vehicles that traveled during that 14-day collection period, it's 20.4 miles per hour. So during the 14-day collection period, 5,193 vehicles traveled through that block. There were actually 2 maximum speeds of 40 miles per hour, which were recorded. And strangely enough, they were both on a Saturday. So it's Saturday, July 10th. One was at 8:31 a.m., the other at 9:39 a.m. And they were both in the eastbound direction. Then you've got a minimum speed of 12 miles per hour. It records pretty much anything and everything by the second. So there's actually a raw data report, and it's literally dozens of pages. That's every single time this thing pings, data goes up to the cloud, and we can pull it. Looking at the volume, it's very low volume streets. So the ADT, which is at average daily traffic, you're looking at 374 vehicles a day on weekdays and 370 on weekends. So since the numbers are pretty similar to one another, I don't think it's a cut through. Almost the same numbers going through there every single day, whether it's Monday through Sunday. And then regarding the volume itself, it's very low. You know, the street design, it could handle 1,000, 2,000 vehicles a day, no problem, and this is under 400. So it's not like you're talking congestion like a Brentwood Boulevard or McKnight or something. And then just looking at that traffic analysis report, you know, the days of the week are called out. And it looks like, you know, the worst day to find anybody speeding would be on a Saturday, and there were only 7 cars over the threshold. So the threshold that you can plug in here, I picked 10 miles per hour. So the posted speed limit on this block is 20, and then I flag it, punch in 10, and then anything that's hitting, say, 30 and above will be in this report. Actually, you know, all the numbers are in the report, but I just want to see from an enforcement standpoint, when does it become, you know, too fast? So if you pick 10 miles per hour over the threshold of 20, meaning 30 and above, you've only got 7 cars, which is 0.8% of the total volume, which again is less than 400 vehicles a day. So that's pretty low. And then looking at some of the other reports,
And I think your mic's off.
oh, just came back on.
Yeah.
So you have to stay there for the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, it's still on. It's got a blinking light. I don't know, does that mean battery, or is that, there's a green light flashing on that side?
Can I? More like a.
Okay. But yeah, just looking at the,
Can I ask
Yeah.
a question of you? So I mean, you provided us a lot of material, and it's very well appreciated. Do I understand it correctly that your recommendation based on the 85th percentile analysis and the volume of traffic generally, that the MUTC really wouldn't justify traffic calming in this area of Eulalie?
correct, yeah, cutting to the chase here, there's vehicles parked on both sides. There's no parking on one side or the other. They're allowed to park on both sides. 85th percentile is really low. So typically you don't do anything unless you're greater than 5 miles per hour over that posted speed limit. So if I saw a lot of cars doing 25 and above, I'd be more, I guess, accepting of putting something in. And the volume is just so low. When we looked at Harrison, we were looking at in the 200s. You know, this is 370. And then putting in perspective, I looked at High School Drive, like north of Litzinger, and that's like 1,600 cars a day. So, I mean, there's way more volume there. So in order to get the best bang for your buck, I would look at streets with a lot of volume, streets with a lot of, you know, speeding issues. This isn't one of them, is the short answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dan. So your recommendation is to leave alone.
I would say you leave it alone. I mean, we can always collect data again later if something changes. I mean, I even put that in a report that, you know, COVID's going to skew your data no matter what. You know, people are working from home. There's just not as much traffic. And then school's out too, assuming that school returns to normal. Maybe there'd be more traffic there. I just don't see it going from under 400 to 1,000. It's just probably never going to happen.
Moving on to the next request was 8906 Pine.
Pine is a completely different animal. So if you look at that one and the highlights and the same reports and everything, I'll go back to the beginning here, but we're talking about Pine between High School and Brentwood Boulevard. So we've looked at that before. We've looked at Pine further west. This, when we studied it years ago, it was slightly slower than to the west, so that's why the one was put in further west, like closer to Hatton. And we elected to put in the speed limit sign that flashes your speed, the radar-enabled speed limit sign in this block for westbound traffic, because that was the direction that seemed to help with the most. But looking at the data for this, we've got an 85th percentile speed of 30, as compared to the other one, which was, say, 25. And then the 50th percentile speed is 25, which, again, those numbers are slightly over. And then the average speed, 25.4. But then when we look at the counts over roughly the same 14-day period, it's more than double than Eulalie. So we're looking at 12,419 vehicles. There was one maximum speed point recorded on Sunday, June 20th at 14:49 hours of 64 miles per hour. So that's pretty way off the scale in terms of its 20 miles per hour that it's posted. And then looking at the other volumes, so your ADT, that average daily traffic, Monday through Friday, 949 vehicles, Saturday, Sunday, 887. So there's more vehicles Monday through Friday. Could be people working in the area using it as a cut-through, could be people trying to get to the school. You know, the volume's not ridiculous. It's not like a McKnight. It's within its design parameters, so that's okay. And then looking at your data from that traffic analysis report, you know, on a Friday, there were 248 vehicles over that 20 mile per hour speed limit, meaning doing 30 or greater. So that represents like 13.2% of the volume for that day. So that's a pretty good chunk of the people that are 30 and above. And then there's other days that it's not great either. So like Wednesday, 207 vehicles, that's like 10%, you know, and the average speeder was doing 33.3 on a Wednesday. So looking at that, that's really not great there as far as not enforcement, but as far as them obeying the speed limit. You know, the quantity of violators ranges from roughly 162 to 248 vehicles per day, which represents like 8.7, you know, roughly 9% to 13% of that total volume. You know, I'd like to see it, say, 5% or less.
So based on that, your recommendation is to place a speed cushion. Where would that location be?
Yeah, what I had put in the recommendation was, you know, I would put something in just because of the 85th percentile speed, the volume, and I put, you know, speed control could include speed cushions, speed enforcement, which we already talked about enforcement, and then, or some combination. So it is a really long block. You know, you can see that from the drawing on the front page, the aerial, I should say. I didn't know if we'd wanted to put one mid-block and see if that helps. You know, it's such a long block. Ideally, you would put in two. You'd space them at equal intervals so that there's no way you could do beyond that. I don't want to make it detrimental to fire.
So Bola, can I ask a question? Is this something that has to go to the full board for approval, or can this be done through the committee?
I think it can be done through the committee. That
We
that
did
was
it
the question I
before
was
through committee. I
asking.
looked it up.
So with that in mind, I'll make a motion that Public Works be directed to place 2 speed cushions along the section of Pine between High School Drive and Brentwood Boulevard.
Second.
The only question I have, Dan, is, you know, we budgeted so many of these for the year. I don't know where we're at on how many we have and the money we have.
Yeah, we've
Are
only
there
put the
other
one down
requests?
this year, which would be Rosalie, the one that's on Pine near Hatton, that came out of 2020's budget. So I know I'd already looked at the budget. A full set is roughly $4,000 from TAPCO. I would just buy them through TAPCO. They're part of a purchasing cooperative, so we wouldn't necessarily have to get quotes. We could do 2 purchases. You know, the only caveat is where we place those people will lose parking that's on the street. You know, but I know the one side they don't park on either, so.
Right.
But whoever it impacts, we'll just have to let them know, because that was a complaint we got in Rosalie. Well, now I can't park there. It's like, well, these folks have driveways. I don't know what else to do. We can't have
Yeah.
a solution without a little
I think
consequence.
We budgeted, what, 50 grand for these things?
We did.
And we've only put down 1 this year,
Correct.
so this would be 3.
Right.
Kathy?
Questions. I'd like to reserve some of that money for High School Drive, for at least one there, because I think that's well justified. I'd like to see just one go in rather than starting out with 2. I know it's a long street. A lot of us in Ward 4 use that if we're trying to get to Brentwood Boulevard from Ward 4. It's either Renwood. You can't come out on Lawn because then you're going up a hill and traffic's coming on the curve. So a lot of us use it to get to Brentwood Boulevard. I haven't seen that many people speed, to be perfectly honest. And I understand the concerns, but I'd like to see one go first at one point and see how that is rather than doing 2. It just seems like a lot for one area.
Got a motion for 2 of them right now, so I guess we could take a, oh, I'm sorry.
Dan, is that, I only got a B in my traffic engineering class in college, so is that the best? I mean, is 2 the recommendation? I mean, is it something to grow? I don't know. I mean, I would kind of
Right.
defer to the subject matter experts on that one. Like, if the recommendation is I'll tell you anecdotally, I drive that road every day. It's wider. It is, people do speed on it. I mean, I've been on this committee for ever since I was elected, and time and again, people ask for traffic calming, and time and again, the data doesn't bear out the anecdotal observations. But I think we have an instance in which
Yeah, when you look at that
there's data
speed.
that supports it. I mean, so, I mean, but if is that what staff's the recommendation of?
I've looked at it
staff?
both ways, and I thought, well, if you put in 1 and say you put it mid-block, then you would run the data collection again and see what effect you've had on it. And then if it didn't slow it down enough, well, then you would need to move it and then put in your other ones so they're equally spaced, and then run the test again and then see, well, how much more did that drop it? You know,
So what, I mean, I can tell you that it's kind of like a runway. So
Right.
like, you know, you have
if
to
you put in
slow
2,
it
there's
to get it,
absolutely no way you're gonna be able to pick up enough speed once you go over that set to then boost your speed enough to get up to 64 unless you hit it and go veering off the road. You know, I do know that that does happen, you know, like with speed bumps. If people glide over them like in Target and then they mash the accelerator and then go up to the next one, hit the brake and go over it. You know, these don't allow that, you know, it's a speed cushion, so it's longer than a
Would it
bump.
be the same as what is further down?
It would
further
be
west
like
on
the one that's
Pine?
here on Rosalie, the one that's on Pine. That's why I said Tapco makes those. You know, the one on Rosalie is slightly different. I added the yellow because it's on a hill and I wanted it a little more visible. These could be wider yellow. I'd probably do yellow again because it seemed to turn out well.
I think when we put this toolkit together, we gave Dan the power to make these decisions.
Yeah.
So, what's your decision, Dan?
So if we, well, I mean, we
Yeah.
still have a motion to
Right, for the
authorize
2.
2, I mean, it doesn't mean we have to start with 2 necessarily, but if the motion calls for 2, or says, or gives you the authority, you know, the authority to set 2, I mean, I agree with you. You know, this is something that,
You want to amend that? There would be, I just defer to the subject. I don't know. But I agree that there should be some traffic
Right.
calming.
It's a long block, and
but-
that's why I thought, well, 2 is possible. 1, I don't know what the reduction in speed would amount to unless you ran another series of data collection.
right,
Yeah. I understand the concern and wanting to, but let's look at Brentwood as a resident where every corner has a stop sign. There are 7 stop signs between Renwood and Litzinger. I think there are 11 to get down to Manchester Road. It's ridiculous. And I understand why people run them because there's a stop sign at every block. So if we put speed cushions in every block, we're gonna have the same problem eventually. And we won't be the city of Warrenth, we'll be the city of stop for
I
calming
gotta tell you,
devices.
Alderman, I completely disagree with that analysis. First of all, a stop sign is passive. If you blow through it, nothing happens to your car. If you blow through a speed cushion at 25 or 35 miles an hour, something happens to you. Your car, you know, your suspension does get affected. It isn't affected if you blow through a stop sign. The second thing is, with all due respect, I don't understand what the concern is about 11 stop signs. It's a residential area. You're not supposed to be driving fast. You're not supposed to be, you know, hustling to get to Manchester Road or to Brentwood Boulevard. These are neighborhoods. People are living here. Kids are playing here. Dogs are being walked here. I don't understand the concern. I really don't.
Can I respond? That's-
Absolutely.
That's the theory. In practice, look at people and how we have road rage and we have people where emotion plays a part. As much as we wish it didn't, it does.
I don't want to legislate against somebody who's road rage.
I don't know, except I have no magic answer. It's just that there's a lot.
This is my commute, and I mean, Kathy, I tend to agree with you on High School Boulevard. There are something, I counted once, there, from my Pine dead ends into my neighborhood, and from Pine to High School over to Eager to go to the CIBC place, I crossed through, I think, 11 stop signs. but not on this block. There's nothing. I mean, it is. I find I have committed this into speeding, not even intentionally. I didn't realize I was. It's wider, it's longer. There's no cross street. It's unlike other blocks. It's long without anything except maybe a child like running, in between. I think if this is, I mean, I remember when it was first reviewed way back when,
Right,
towards the
years
west
ago.
end of Pine, like really the data didn't bear that out, but you observe that, oh, but by the way, on this side, it is, I think that this, I mean, I'm generally kind of loath to, I'm weary of stop signs and I'm weary of traffic calming, but I think when the data supports it, I mean, my only hesitation is I just don't know if that's appropriate. I'm fine with giving, if you think that that's what we should do, then
I'm afraid if you
I'm
put
okay
in
with
one,
that.
it just won't reduce it enough. It'll reduce it, but what do you feel comfortable reducing it to? Two will definitely do it. It'll just take up some more parking, but we could equally space those two and then go, put it in the same location, run the test, and then you can actually do a chart and show side by side like what we knew now, and then versus what you would know in the future with those data points.
Well, we got a motion, and Dan's recommendation is 2 speed cushions. So if there's any other discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you, Dan.
All right. We'll
Moving
get 'em
on to
ordered.
new business, we've got, Ed, you're back up with a fitness program, continuation of what I guess is.
Yes, at your positions is the memo and the contract from SSM Executive. This is the corporation that we use to provide the NFPA prescribed annual fit for duty and medical physicals for all the firefighters in the Brentwood Fire Department. We've been using this program since 2016. I will say that this type of physical, as a recent recipient of it, it is comprehensive and it is better than the department I came from. So I was highly appreciative of getting that. It's very convenient. It's a one-stop shop. Everything is done in the same building. Where I went before, you had to do it in three different phases. So this is beneficial to the department. We have in the budget for 21, $23,600 for physicals for everyone. That will float a little bit plus or minus depending on the age of the person that's getting a physical. So as an example, Andrew Brinkman in his 20s will not get the same physical that I get. Mine's going to be a little bit more expensive just because of age. Anyway, like I said, we've been doing this since 2016. We would greatly appreciate being able to continue this program. SSM has provided a contract there as well, and we'd like to continue the relationship. And the ask is that if we could get potentially a first and second reading at the August meeting, because the physicals, comprehensive as they are, they do take up a little bit of time with scheduling because there's probably about 12 other departments that participate in this program as well. We'd like to get all of these done before the end of the year so that we can get everyone evaluated and fit for duty on January 1. So that is the ask.
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the full Board of Aldermen that they approve that the City of Brentwood enter into a 3-year agreement with SSM Medical Group Executive Health to provide wellness and fitness programs for the 23 employees in 2021, 2022, and 2023, and that it be evaluated by the full Board of Aldermen on a first and second reading basis at the next meeting.
Second? Anybody?
Second.
All right, I just got one quick question. Bull, as far as putting something like this out to bid, these are kind of like the only people that do this.
That's correct.
All right. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Very good.
All
Thank you,
yours,
sir.
All right, we'll move on to citizen comment. Anybody? Jane?
I just want to say that when I've seen the golf cart, and, all the golf carts that I see, they're always going to bars. So that's kind of why I think people drive golf carts a lot of times. I've seen their little kids. The other thing we need to worry about on our streets are the kids on these motorized scooters and these other little vehicles. They've been on my street, and they're like 4:30 in the afternoon, and I'm like, you guys are going to get hit out here. Saw a little kid last night whipping down lawn, and then he pulled in the driveway, I guess where he lived, but I mean, this little scooter was zipping along on the street, and I'm going, you know, the way cars are flying up and down. These are little kids that are like 6, 7, 8 years old riding these scooters. I saw this other little kid, some little thing called a zipper. He was flipping around, a little thing you sit on, and it was motorized, and I'm like, I gotta watch this. This is even more scary. These little kids on these motorized things, so. Now, one thing about Pine Avenue, you guys don't know because you don't live there like I do. Our street floods where the sewer is. So when we have torrential rains, we have a lot of flooding in that area. So we can't really just stick one speed bump in the middle of the block because the way the water goes through that area. So that's why it's really important to have one up here and one on the flat, one on the hill, one on the flat. It's the only way it's gonna work. And I mean, I'm out there every day. I know what'll work. I'm not a dummy. Thank you for your vote tonight. And I'm sorry that we're all gonna have to drive over the thing. I don't wanna drive over it either. I hate them, but I'm gonna drive over it. I'll pull out of my driveway if I have to and back over it. But it's gonna help the safety of our street. Nobody needs to be doing a moving violation at 30 on our street.
All right,
So thank you. It took a lot of time to do this, but I am thrilled.
thank you, Jane. Anybody virtually, Kelly?
No.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.